Ladies and gentlemen, our top lead. Yesterday it was K. Kavita, today it is Arvind Kejriwal. For the last 48 hours, the news has only gotten from bad to worse for the opposition in India. The Delhi High Court today not just ensured that Arvind Kejriwal continues to stay in jail, it also landed a huge blow to the Aam Aadmi Party's Kattar Imandar image. It wasn't just a few remarks or observations. The entire judgment was scathing. Sample this. The High Court said there is evidence on record to prove that the Delhi Chief Minister conspired and was involved in making a liquor policy for which he received kickbacks, which he then used in AAP's Goa campaign. So in short, the judge has said that the ED has evidence against Arvind Kejriwal and therefore his arrest is valid. Now, the court has also junked AAP's claim that Kejriwal was intentionally arrested right before elections to give the BJP an edge. The judge said Kejriwal skipping 9 summons played its part in his arrest before polls. The court also said it has examined his arrest and it was as per law, irrespective of the timing. The argument by the Delhi Chief Minister that the 2 approvers who have implicated him are linked to the BJP was also shot down by the court. The Delhi High Court clearly said it is not concerned about who gets a ticket and who gives electoral bonds to whom. The court said the approval law is 100 years old and it is a judicial process that gives an approver pardon and not the ED. Therefore, raising aspersions on them is like raising aspersions on the judicial process itself. Now, the Aam Aadmi Party has, of course, said it will be moving the Supreme Court. It also continues to claim that witnesses are being pressurized by the ED and that not a rupee, I'm going to repeat this, they're saying not a rupee from the so-called scam has been traced. Listen in.
मैं आपको कुछ गवाहों के बारे में बताना चाहता हूं कि उनकी गवाही किस तरीके से ली गई। बार बार कोर्ट्स में ऑन रिकॉर्ड ये बात आई है कि गवाहों के ऊपर दबाव डाला गया, गवाहों को मारा गया, पीटा गया, डराया गया, धमकाया गया और उनके ऊपर ये दबाव बनाया गया कि वो अपनी पुरानी गवाही बदल के वो गवाही दें जो ईडी कह रही है, जो केंद्र सरकार की एजेंसी कह रही है, वो गवाही दें। ये कहा जा सकता है ये पूरा का पूरा मामला फर्जी सबूतों और झूठे गवाहों पे आधारित है।
किसी को जमानत दी गई या नहीं, इस पर टिप्पणी करना सीधे सीधे न्यायपालिका के ऊपर टिप्पणी करने के समान है। भाई, अगर आप देखें तो इसी आधार के ऊपर अभी संजय सिंह जी को तो बेल मिली है। आप इस ढंग से राजनीतिक आधार के ऊपर कोर्ट के निर्णयों के ऊपर समीक्षा, आक्षेप और कटाक्ष नहीं कर सकते। इसके आगे और स्पष्ट रूप से कहा गया है, हु गिव्स टिकट फॉर कंटेस्टिंग इलेक्शन एंड हु परचेजेस इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड इज नॉट द कंसर्न ऑफ द कोर्ट। ये बहुत महत्वपूर्ण प्रेक्षण है। इज अ वेरी सिग्निफिकेंट ऑब्जर्वेशन बाय द हाई कोर्ट कि किसको टिकट दिया गया, किसने इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड लिया, इस विषय का कोर्ट की प्रोसीडिंग से कोई लेना देना नहीं है। अर्थात जो एक कानूनी विषय को वह राजनीतिक विषय बताने का प्रयास कर रहे थे, दैट वॉज क्लेवरली व्हेन ही वॉज ट्राइंग टू पुट ए कवर ऑफ टेक्निकलिटी on their hidden motive of politicality, which has been totally discarded by the court.
My guest this evening, Tushar Gupta, is a political analyst. Desh Ratan Nigam is a lawyer. Uma Sisodia is leader of the Aam Aadmi Party. Sanjay Hegde is a senior advocate. Thank you very much all. Uma Sisodia, I'm of course, for obvious reasons, coming to you. This is a big setback to the Aam Aadmi Party. This is not just the ED saying what it has been saying for the last 2 years. Now it is the Delhi High Court that has that has examined the evidence at hand and said that Arvind Kejriwal's arrest was perfectly valid, number one. And number two, there is evidence to show that both in his personal and professional capacity, he was involved in asking for bribes/kickbacks and then laundering this money. Do you see what the Delhi High Court has said and done today as a big setback to your party?
देखिए, मैं अपने देश की न्यायपालिका को नमन करते हुए एंकर महोदया आपको और आपके चैनल के माध्यम से मैं उस स्थिति में उस घटना के बारे में आपको याद दिलाना चाहूंगी। आपको बहुत अच्छे से याद होगा कि आज से कुछ साल पहले सुप्रीम कोर्ट के 5 जस्टिस ने मीडिया के सामने आकर ये कहा गया था कि हम पर अननेसेसरी दबाव बनाया जाता है। वो एक ऐसी घटना थी आजाद हिंदुस्तान के इतिहास में जो भूतो न भविष्य थी। उससे पहले कभी सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जस्टिस ने आकर बाहर ये नहीं कहा कि हम पर अननेसेसरी का दबाव है, और उसके बाद ये घटना नहीं हुई। आप समझ सकते हैं कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जस्टिस आज से 4-5 साल पहले की, मुझे एग्जैक्टली डेट याद नहीं है, पर आज से 4-5 साल पहले की वो घटना है जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जस्टिस ने आकर ये कहा था, 5 जस्टिस ने मीडिया के सामने कि हम पर अननेसेसरी का दबाव है। तो जब उस समय वो दबाव था, तो आज ये समझिए कि आज ये दबाव हमारी जुडिशरी के ऊपर कितना ज्यादा होगा। एंकर महोदय, मैं आपको एक दूसरा केस याद दिलाना चाहूंगी, जस्टिस लोया हत्याकांड। जस्टिस लोया कौन थे और उनकी किन संदिग्ध परिस्थितियों में मृत्यु हुई और उसके बाद उनके हत्याकांड को किस तरह से दबा दिया गया, ये भी पूरे देश को मालूम है। आज हमारी जुडिशरी के ऊपर प्रेशर है। मैं माननीय कोर्ट का अपमान नहीं कर रही हूँ, लेकिन मैं क्वेश्चन तक कह रही हूँ। जब हमारे सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जस्टिस तक भी आकर ये कहते हैं कि हम पर दबाव है, तो हाई कोर्ट के जस्टिस क्या कहेंगे? ये तो मेरी मतलब समझ से बाहर है कि मैं क्या कहूँ। हमें फिर भी उम्मीद है, हमें बहुत उम्मीद है। हमारे इस समय जो हमारे सीजेआई हैं चंद्रचूड़ जी, मुझे उन पर बहुत उम्मीद है कि वो इस समय अकेले व्यक्ति इस पूरे देश में महसूस होते हैं जो इस समय मोदी और उनकी जो पूरी सरकार है उसके सामने अकेले खड़े हुए डटे हुए दिखते हैं। तो हमें उनके ऊपर भरोसा है कि वाई चंद्रचूड़ हमारी बात को सुनेंगे।
ओके उमा सिसोदिया। Okay, Uma Sisodia, I've heard you out. Essentially, for our viewers in the South, essentially what the Aam Aadmi Party leader on the show is saying that the judiciary is under pressure by the government, and if 5 years ago the Supreme Court judges had collectively come out and said it in public, then what is saying that there was no pressure on the Delhi High Court when it delivered today's judgment? Tushar Gupta, would you want to come in here? Because look, what Ms. Sisodia is saying very bluntly is something that has been said in a more polished and civilized way by the Aam Aadmi Party in its own press conference.
Good evening, Shreya. Always a pleasure to be on your show. Let me fact check the Aam Aadmi Party spokesperson. When those judges of the Supreme Court spoke out, they were not speaking against the government. They were speaking against the Chief Justice then and how the cases were assigned to certain benches without any rationale. In fact, they were not talking about the government at all. They were talking about their disagreements and their concerns with the CJI and the functioning of the Supreme Court. They had nothing to do with the government. I'm sorry, but I don't know where this story has been cooked up by the Aam Aadmi Party spokesperson. But Shreya, the arguments that have been given by the Aam Aadmi Party, number one, there is no money trail. Now, should I presume that I steal something from you? It's money. I spend it elsewhere and the money is gone. Does it mean that the theft never happened? Number two, Arvind Kejriwal claims it's a Lok Sabha election season. He needs to be on the ground. The court debunked that argument. It said that the law has to work equally for all. No amount of melodrama can derail Article 14. Number three, they've been talking about electoral bonds, trying to link it with some sort of extortion, talking about approvers, say how the law has been fabricated or manipulated against the Aam Aadmi Party. The Delhi High Court has answered that also. And more importantly, the Delhi High Court has said that we have sufficient understanding or evidence from the ED that Arvind Kejriwal was involved in personal and professional capacity. And the 9 ED summons that Arvind Kejriwal consciously ignored are also now working against him. The decision is working against him. My simple question is, if the Aam Aadmi Party is so sure that this is political vendetta, what stops them from going to the Supreme Court tomorrow, citing a violation of fundamental rights? Because I would want to tell the Aam Aadmi Party spokesperson, in this country, you can approach the Supreme Court directly. And if your fundamental rights are violated, what stops the Aam Aadmi Party from doing so since March 21st?
They are approaching the Supreme Court tomorrow.
But Shreya, they are not approaching the Supreme Court.
No, they are. No, here's the thing. The Supreme Court has been very clear. No, just a minute. Give me a minute here, Tushar. See, all of us see what happens, right? The Supreme Court, every time you approach them directly, says, first, follow the due process. The due process is you approach a lower court, the lower court doesn't give you relief, then you approach us. That's how it works for the Supreme Court. So it's not like that the Aam Aadmi Party will not be approaching the Supreme Court. They are approaching the Supreme Court tomorrow.
Shreya, I'm saying if there is a violation of fundamental rights, if they want to claim violation of fundamental rights, they can move directly to the Supreme Court. Tomorrow they are moving the Supreme Court to call the arrest illegal or for bail, whatever. They're not moving to the court for violation of fundamental rights.
Okay.
That's my only argument. Thank you.
I'm just going to get Sanjay Hegde. I'm just going to get Sanjay Hegde into something that you have said. This is about, the argument that the Aam Aadmi Party, Sanjay Hegde, has been giving us for the last 6 months about how essentially the entire case against Aam Aadmi Party leaders is hinged on statements of 2 approvers. Now, the Aam Aadmi Party has been saying there is a direct link between the BJP and these approvers. One of them, at least the father of one of them, has got a ticket from the NDA camp, from an ally of the BJP, that is the TDP. And the other one gave 55 crore rupees via electoral bonds to the BJP. This is something that we know, the electoral bond issue we know is on record, right? So this is something that the Aam Aadmi Party has been saying. Today the court has said, we are not concerned about who buys electoral bonds for whom or who gives a ticket to who. Is that possible for a court not to be bothered about these linkages before it decides the fate of a man or a party?
Well, Shreya, the first thing to remember is that the framework under which the court was operating, this was not an application for bail, which had been turned down by the lower court and the High Court was sitting in appeal. This was a challenge to the very remand order by which Arvind Kejriwal was remanded to custody. And in the course of that appeal, a large number of arguments were made. And whatever the court says generally is taken as prima facie. It is not intended to affect the trial, nor will it possibly affect the bail application as and when it is made. The Supreme Court, I'm sure, will most likely clarify it when the matter reaches there. The question really is, was there material to arrest the man and to remand him into custody, and was procedure followed? There is a judgment of the Supreme Court recently in the Bansal case, against which the ED then filed a review. The review has also been dismissed, which says that before you actually arrest, there have to be specific reasons recorded. All that compliance had to be checked out. But since there was a vast canvas which was argued before the court, including the fact that essentially the case rests on approver evidence. Approver evidence, even in normal times, is a very weak kind of evidence. Courts tend to look for other corroborative evidence before they rely on approver evidence when it comes to the final stage after the trial. I do think that the court could have worded it better. The court saying that we are not concerned at all with the quality of the approver evidence or what happens in electoral bonds and this and that. I do think that sometimes when courts have to dictate judgments in a hurry, the rhetoric of dictation takes over. That is why some very, very good judges of old used to write very short judgments and judgments which they wrote by hand. When you dictate away and you try to answer every argument made in court, sometimes a sentence or two can be taken out of context. I must also be borne in mind that it was the same judge of the Delhi High Court who refused bail even to Sanjay Singh, and later the Supreme Court overturned that judgment. So let's see what happens in the Supreme Court.
let's see what happens in the Supreme Court. But Desh Ratan Nigam, this is not just something that Sanjay Hegde is saying. This is something that the Aam Aadmi Party is saying. They're saying it was the same court, it was the same judge. When Sanjay Singh's bail application came before them, they refused to entertain it. They called Sanjay Singh the kingpin of the entire scam, etc., etc. Didn't give him bail. The matter reached the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court happily gave bail to Sanjay Singh. So this essentially, they are not saying it in as many words, but indicating that this is a bias playing out. कि वो Delhi High Court को bias है, and I think the spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party on the show has also said as much, and the Supreme Court will rectify this bias. Do you think that is fair?
Shreya, let me tell you, this judgment was not passed in a hurry. It was, in fact, passed after a few days. Consideration. Hurry means the arguments have taken place and you dictate the order then and there. So it's a well-considered judgment. The judge took her own time and came to prima facie conclusions. I agree, these are prima facie conclusions. And the court was sitting in writ jurisdiction, not in appeal. In appeal, they could have appreciated all the evidence and everything. Here, it's a writ jurisdiction for violation of fundamental rights or legal rights. That he went against his own arrest, where the court found on the basis of material before it. And some material was shown to the court in confidence also in the earlier petition, where the material was, because it cannot be put in public domain, otherwise investigation gets compromised. So the material was before them, they considered it and found Mr. Kejriwal to be involved both in use, concealing, formulation of policy, and that prima facie material is available. They've also said the Aam Aadmi Party will get, or Kejriwal will get a chance to question all this in an appropriate stage in a court of law, which is trial court, not before the High Court. So let us make that distinction. They found no violation of fundamental right. The other issues that they have dealt with, that they are not going to discuss politics about it. We'll go on sound principles of law. About approver, it is the court which grants the approver status. It is not the ED that can declare anybody an approver. They look at the material, they look at all the circumstances and evidence around with them, then they allow that approver. So that they said it would be casting aspersions if you're saying there is a quid pro quo and this is how it has happened. And certainly about bonds and everything, that issue is not before the court. Now, if the Kejriwal wants that to be brought, he can bring it in trial court, put that evidence and try to, if he has some material, can show the and prove the linkages, but not in a writ court of law. Writ court has very limited jurisdiction. Please understand that. And the scathing remarks that have come are very serious. Please understand, Aam Aadmi Party does not realize this. And especially, when Anna Hazare, from where Mr. Kejriwal came through this anti-corruption plank, recently said, Jaisi karni, waisi bharni, on the arrest of Kejriwal. Please understand, politically also, there also Mr. Anna Hazare, who was the beacon of the anti-corruption movement, is clearly pointing fingers towards Kejriwal. Legal issues are there, which the court has dealt it very clearly. So you can't be saying ED is not doing its function. ED is doing its function properly and they should. The focus has to be, Shreya, focus has to be on corruption. Zero tolerance for corruption, and that is where we should focus on.
Correct. I agree with you. I agree with you. Corruption should not be tolerated anywhere, irrespective of what side of the ideological divide you are on, because it is a curse for this country. Sanjay Hegde, very quickly, I don't have too much time and I do want to look at what this does to the image of the Aam Aadmi Party, but just on that question about approvers, the court saying, taking, I don't know whether you can say taking the moral high ground and saying that it's not the ED who decides whether someone can become an approver or not. It's actually a judicial process that decides, etc. Is that strictly true, given the fact that, the approver is coming via the Enforcement Directorate? The Enforcement Directorate is questioning various people who are witnesses and accused, and it is from them that someone decides to turn an approver. So, ये तो थोड़ी idealistic बात नहीं हो गई कि approver जो है वो बिल्कुल, it's just by judicial process. The entire process is so clean that you cannot question it, because that is exactly what the court has said today.
Firstly, let me clarify that I have not cast any allegations of bias. I should not be understood.
Yeah.
I can say that courts are mistaken.
No, you haven't. Umaji has said
it. In law. Okay. The second thing is, as far as the approver is concerned, I do think the court here has erred in law. The approver evidence, as I told you earlier, is a weak piece of evidence. that evidence is tendered by the prosecution. It is only after the prosecution first says that we wish that one of the accused wants to turn approver and makes an application that he be granted a pardon and his statement be recorded. Does the judicial process allow it or not allow it? Nobody was casting any aspersions on the judicial process. They were casting aspersions on the conduct of the approver himself. They said, look, if the approver is somebody who pays through electoral bonds, whose relative becomes a candidate for the NDA in the Lok Sabha, then any evidence given by that person is of such a weak character that you cannot possibly arrest a chief minister or a sitting chief minister of a state based only on that evidence. The court seems to have possibly misunderstood the arguments. Let the entire order come out. We can read it at more leisure. And I'm sure that this will be a point which will be urged in the Supreme Court.
Okay, so I have about 4 minutes left and I'm going to come to Uma Sisodia with a very simple question. Uma Sisodia, आपकी पार्टी जो थी एंटी करप्शन मूवमेंट से उसका जन्म हुआ था. आज देखिए 10 साल बाद सिचुएशन ये है कि आपके जो लीडर हैं अरविंद केजरीवाल वो करप्शन के लिए जेल के पीछे हैं. अब आप कह लीजिए ये पॉलिटिकल वेंडेटा है, आप कह लीजिए कि ये बीजेपी जो है एजेंसीज का इस्तेमाल कर रही है, आप कह लीजिए ये सब हो रहा है क्योंकि इलेक्शन है और प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी घबराए हुए हैं ऑपोजिशन से एटसेट्रा. बट द फैक्ट इज दैट योर चीफ minister is behind bars and a court of law in this country, you may think कि वो सही बोल रहे हैं, गलत बोल रहे हैं, but a court of law in this country has said कि भैया उनके खिलाफ एविडेंस है और जो एविडेंस हमने देखा है, जो ईडी ने हमें दिखाया है, हमको लगता है कि जो ईडी ने किया वो बिल्कुल ठीक किया और जो अरेस्ट किया वो बिल्कुल ठीक किया कि क्योंकि इनको घूस मिली, इन्होंने घूस मांगी, इनको मिली और इन्होंने उस घूस को मनी लॉन्डर करके गोवा इलेक्शन में लगा दिया. ये तो एक कोर्ट बोल रहा है, तो ये आपकी इमेज को धक्का तो है ना.
देखिए श्रेया जी, अभी जो कुछ भी देश में चल रहा है, आपने कहा ईडी ने ये जो भी एविडेंसेस हैं वो रखे, ये रखे और आम आदमी पार्टी कह रही है कि ईडी ने हमें फंसा दिया और हमें आम आदमी पार्टी विक्टिम जैसा रोल प्ले कर रही है. आपने अभी मुझे ये कहा. मैं आपको मोदी जी के उस बयान की तरफ लेके जाना चाहती हूँ जो 2014 से पहले मोदी जी ने कहा कि ईडी जो है वो सरकार के हाथों की कठपुतली है और कांग्रेस की जो सरकार है वो ईडी का मिसयूज कर रही है. ये मेरे वर्ड्स नहीं थे, ये आम आदमी पार्टी के वर्ड्स नहीं थे, ये हमारे देश के इस समय के मौजूदा प्रधानमंत्री जी के वर्ष थे. 2014 से पहले जब वो कैंपेन कर रहे थे 2014 के चुनाव में, तब उन्होंने ये एलिगेशंस कांग्रेस के खिलाफ लगाए थे. अब मेरी समझ से बाहर है, उस समय जब वो अपोजिशन में थे तो ईडी उनके लिए बड़ी परेशानी का सबब थी. आज जब वो सत्ता में है तो वो कह रहे हैं ईडी बिल्कुल सही काम कर रही है. तो ये क्वेश्चन पहले एक बार प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी से जाकर पूछ लीजिए कि एक ईडी जो 10 साल पहले खराब थी वो 10 साल के बाद बिल्कुल सही कैसे हो गई. जब आप अपोजिशन में होते हैं तो आप कुछ और कहते हैं, जब आप सत्ता में होते हैं तो आप कुछ और कहते हैं. पूरा देश देख रहा है, 140 करोड़ की जनसंख्या और लाखों करोड़ों आम आदमी पार्टी के कार्यकर्ताओं को आप इस तरह से बेवकूफ नहीं बना सकते.
उमा जी, सवाल का जवाब दीजिए. पार्टी की इमेज को धक्का लगा, ये तो मानेंगी ना कि लोगों को तो लगेगा कि इतने सारे इनके टॉप लीडरशिप जेल में है तो दाल में कुछ काला तो है, पूरी दाल काली होना हो.
श्रेया जी, पार्टी की इमेज को धक्का नहीं लगा. अगर पार्टी की इमेज को धक्का लगा होता तो आरएसएस उस जो एक सर्वे निकल कर आया है कि आप लोग 250 सीट नहीं जीत पा रहे हैं बीजेपी वाले, उस सर्वे पर हम लोग डिबेट्स नहीं कर रहे होते. आरएसएस सर्वे को लेकर चिंता में नहीं होता. कहाँ की बात कर रहे हैं आप 400 पार. आरएसएस वालों की टेंशन जाकर पूछिए जहाँ 250 सीटें नहीं आ पा रही हैं. और अरविंद केजरीवाल जी को चुनाव के टाइम आप लोगों ने जो छेड़ा है, गले की हड्डी बन रहे हैं ना, उगलते बन रहे हैं.
अच्छा ठीक है, ये कौन सा सर्वे मुझे पता नहीं, बट आई कैन गिव तुषार गुप्ता 20 सेकेंड्स. एक मिनट तुषार गुप्ता, you have 20 seconds to respond to the whole point about the Aam Aadmi Party's image taking a dent. Uma Sisodia is saying not at all. सबको पता है, this is political vendetta that is playing out. This is political victimization that is playing out.
Shreya, two fact checks. No such surveys exist. No such RSS survey exists that gives the BJP 200 seats. And Narendra Modi did not make any comment about the ED during his campaigning days. If he did, if Uma Sissodia can find one, she can tell us, or else she can stop cooking up stories on national television. Finally, Shreya, on the question of image taking a dent, well, that only the Lok Sabha elections will tell us. There is no other way. We all can be very subjective in our approach in interpreting if the party's image has taken a dent. But yes, Arvind Kejriwal was a leader who said jail everyone. He used to accuse ministers across parties and expect them to resign, cooperate with investigating agencies, surrender, or resign. Today, he's running through a case. His deputy chief minister is behind bars for a year. A few of his other deputies are behind bars. He's behind bars. He refuses to give up the CM-ship of Delhi, even at the cost of governance. That is what the people will see. And if the image has taken a dent, we'll get a concrete answer on June 4th.
For the moment, the Aam Aadmi Party is saying, jail ka jawab vote se. But will the voter listen to what the Aam Aadmi Party is saying? We leave it at that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Tushar Gupta, for joining us. Desh Ratan Nigam, thank you for being with us on the show. Uma Sissodia, thank you very much. Sanjay Hegde, good to have you on the show.